Hello, we are live again for another episode here on LinkedIn Live of Codingscape. We are here to talk about all things behind the scenes related to the humans that make the machines work. All things related to modern application development. As we like to say at Codingscape, we've got mad skills for mad projects. We've been hosting this series of live talks with these humans behind the machines to feature expertise from the field, expert problem solving, and real solutions for real tech problems. I'm your host today, Lauren Carris. I am a product and learning leader at Codingscape, committed to amplifying some of the greatest talent in tech, and I am so pleased to be joined today by Benjamin Stendahl. Ben, could you please introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you, what you do, and where you work.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for that intro. I've been working actually in tech for, it's hard to say, but over 20 years now as a software engineer and in various leadership roles. Personally, I grew up all over the country and in parts of Europe, largely because my father was in the Air Force and my wife was actually an Air Force officer when we were married. So I'm kind of a little bit of a perpetual dependent in the eyes of the DoD here. So that DNA didn't leave me. Currently, I'm thrilled to be working at Oura. I'm really focused on the commerce channels within Oura. So things like, how do we effectively do business across the many channels that we have and the many lines of business, and how do we do that while maintaining a high bar for the customer experience?
I love it. For folks who maybe have not heard about Oura, could you tell us a little bit about what Oura is?
Absolutely. So Oura really is it's a healthcare company, and I don't mean that in the sense as a healthcare provider. What I mean is we provide products, specifically the Oura Ring, that allow you to get insights into your own data about your own health. So Oura is best known for its sleep tracking. So Oura does a fantastic job of tracking your sleep, and probably better than anyone in the industry, because this device is more like a passive device. You can wear it all the time. A lot of people don't necessarily like to wear a watch or something bulky when they sleep, or maybe when they're out and about. They want to have a little bit of maybe different accessorizing. The Ring really gives the opportunity to collect as much data in a very passive fashion over a long period of time, and then give it back to you using the app in a way that makes it digestible and understandable. So giving you some health insights, how well you're sleeping, your activity level, a little nudge here and there about like maybe it's time to stand up, walk around a little bit. I get those quite regularly. I sit in this chair for probably far too long, as well as other just like health indicators. And there's different segments based on kind of gender and life stage as well.
I love this. I'm a huge proponent of the convergence of technology and improving the livelihoods of humans. So any insights that we can gain through technology to help us live better lives, I just love. I don't sadly own an Oura Ring. And so I'm really curious. You just said some nudges. Is there like a sensation that you get?
No, it doesn't nudge me physically, and that's part of the passive portion of this device that I really enjoy, is that it's not another bit of feedback like, hey, you need to go do something. I do get soft alerts, and you'll even notice that the Oura app uses rather soft language rather than something like, it's time for you to get up or you're not meeting your goals. Instead, it's things like, maybe you've had less than optimal sleep. Take it easy today. Maybe it's time to rest and relax and recharge. Those types of things, rather than you're not meeting the goal or something like that. And I really appreciate that, because it's that soft language is something that says like, hey, take this into consideration. It's not so much of a directive, and I respond pretty well to that.
That's great. Yes, having been in the tech space for some time and having worked even on apps for young people, I know there's a very fine line between the right copy, the useful tone, and the frequency of nudges. And it can go dark really fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I specifically like this form factor because I do get overwhelmed by notifications and messages. Hey, there's a new article to check out. Hey, there's something on social media. Hey, there's this Slack message. Hey, you got a new email. A lot of things are begging and asking for my attention. And this is something that collects it in the background and is ready for when I want it.
Incredible. Yes, we are in the attention economy, and to have both the technology, but also the insights that are helping to balance this overwhelm of notification and pings and noise and drivers, and really lets you have a little bit more agency with your goals and your own health and insight, I think is super powerful.
Love it.
Love, love. So, on the topic of goals, given that Oura is, it sounds like, presumably here to help you achieve goals, certain health goals, we are actually here to talk about, I could talk about health goals all day long, but we're here to talk about a different kind of goals. And I was doing some research ahead of time, and I came across this really interesting stat. Apparently, 92% of people fail to achieve their New Year's goals. Not so much because of goal setting, but apparently it's more because of the pressure of goals and this like mindset of goals. And so it was a really interesting statistic because in the business world, in the tech world, and with teams, we both have to set goals for our products, for our organization, for our teams, and for us as individuals. And I feel like, contrary to the New Year's resolution type goals, which I think are their own kind of bucket, I've had some success with goals. And so I'm really excited to dig in and understand more about how you approach goals with your tech team, with this sort of mindset and approaches that maybe is unique in this experience at Oura that maybe you've had elsewhere. So could you take us on a little journey and share a little bit about what the philosophy is with you and your engineering team around goals?
But I really like that you started with the New Year's example. I think so many of us, myself included, start off and we're just like, okay, new year, new me. How do I set a big, audacious goal for myself? And then we, attack it with fervor at the very beginning, but then maybe life gets in the way, or maybe there's some extenuating circumstance that knocks us off there. And I don't think that's much different than how we experience it in business and in industry, where we often have big, lofty goals that we want to achieve, but it's easy to get knocked off that path. So, if we're talking the kind of philosophy of it all, I like big, audacious goals, like something that really is hard and stretched for, because there's a lot of satisfaction in reaching those over time, but they're not immediate. And we're not really built that way. At least I'm not personally built that way, to wait for deferred gratification for so long. So one of the ways I kind of try to hedge against that is to make sure that we have a good mix of short, medium, and long term. The long term being a little bit more of the moonshot or the big audacious goals, but then some short and middle term ones that also provide us a little bit of that satisfaction along the way. Not to mention, that's kind of where our flexibility is, right? The long term goal is probably less flexible, a little bit more audacious, a little more on the horizon. Whereas the short term stuff, we may be able to pick and choose and pivot on a little bit more. So that's kind of when I think about the long term goals, is how do I break this down and make it manageable? And then, are there points along that way where there are moments for success and celebration? I think a lot of times we get wrapped up on like how far to the finish line. That seems too far. It's not measurable. It's too far in the distance for it to feel real. So if I can shorten that window and say, okay, when we reach this point, it's a time for a celebration. There's something that's been accomplished and achieved here. It gives me a personal sense of satisfaction in something like a New Year's resolution. If I break it out for a team or a line of business, it gives them a sense of satisfaction. We're making progress towards the bigger goal. We are seeing results. We are on the right path. And same time with middle and longer term goals. So that's really how I like to approach that, and helps kind of keep us on track and allows a little bit of room for pivot.
I love that. Incremental gains, tracking towards a larger goal, being able to see these smaller moments of celebration that are building towards something. And I think there's tons of psychology and research out there on habits and the compounding effect of those habits. And I love the way that
Yeah.
you're framing that for teams also, because it's tough to sometimes feel so far away from that big, hairy, audacious
Yeah.
goal, right? And really get discouraged. And I think that, going back to the New Year's resolution or the New Year's goal, we've sort of been socialized to think of something really giant and big and not really set ourselves up for success in incremental ways to cumulatively achieve that over time.
I like that too. Cumulative,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. I'm curious how you at Oura and with your team balance individual and team goals. And the reason I ask is, again, there is a lot of research out there on goals and goal setting. And I learned recently that personal growth goals, even if they are unrelated to the workplace, when they are communicated and shared with team members, build a sense of shared accountability that sometimes can improve and enhance the work culture. And it was a little counterintuitive because I think for at least myself, much of my career has really been I've been advised to sort of separate, like, home and work.
Mm,
And I think we're just at a time in society where, I mean, look, I'm in my home office, like, work is personal, right?
indeed.
My personality is what I bring to work. And so they really have converged in a different way. So curious how you approach individual and team goals, and if you have any tips for us.
But it's an excellent question, and I also agree. The lines between personal and professional have blurred more, probably since COVID than ever before, as we all went to our homes and personal spaces to do business. It's really hard to divorce those two at the moment here, as I also sit in my home. Um, but when I take a look at, yeah, I guess, individuals and teams, personal and professional goals, um, I really think teams are a collection of individuals. They're not. They're not. A team isn't a separate entity than the individuals. Each individual has their own strengths, weaknesses, motivations, their own home lives, and all the things that go along with being a person. Um, so, not every situation that we have in in the company, in the business, in that line of business, in that squad, in that team, are necessarily going to be perfectly aligned to everybody's individual strengths. So this is where high functioning teams kind of can produce their best benefits, where each other can help kind of fill the gaps and then lift each other up and give each other kind of some stress goal or stretch goals, um, or provide that kind of motivation that may lack as an individual. That accountability you're referencing there. So I really don't look at them as separate, because an individual brings their whole self to work. Um, that individual is part of a team. That team is part of the larger organization. It really is compounding and building. Um, it's hard to use. It's almost sad to use the sports analogy, right? But it's a lot easier if we say something like, if I take a look at like football teams or something like that, a quarterback or somebody can have an explosive Sunday, and everyone thinks like, wow, what a great achievement. But it's rare that that individual achievement happened in isolation. Like there was a lot of considered considerable effort that was happening around them. Um, you know, in this analogy, like blocking was probably there. There was options for that quarterback. The teams stretched the field in just the right way. So while that person is identified and celebrated for their success there, it really was a team effort. And that's how I look at it, in terms of how does a team operate and how can an individual within that succeed. And we still recognize those individuals, we still support them. And same thing with the goals, right? We set a goal for an individual. We want others to support them as we move the whole team forward. And we want that to be a a full effort from the person, not just this is my professional self, I'm working on it this here in isolation, working on this in isolation. And it is more difficult in kind of a distributed environment where we're all working from home. You a little bit less sense of community. So it takes a focused effort to really build that trust, that communication, that collaboration, that accountability that you referenced earlier.
Yeah. Just as you were sharing that team analogy, I was thinking about something you didn't mention, but you described, in fact, without calling it out, and that was communication. You mentioned like the block is there, right? The opportunities are there. And there's so many different communication cues that are happening simultaneously, asynchronously, synchronously, right? I was imagining the play on the field. And so much of what we do day to day with distributed teams, many of us working from home, there's so much communication happening around these goals. It also had me think a little bit of my prior leadership roles, where sometimes I really personally felt compelled to support my team members with their personal goals, but maybe didn't do the best job of bringing them into the fold as part of a discussion of how can we as a team support these individuals with their personal goals, while how might we, not that we all have to, but how might we, right, while we are collectively marching toward a team goal. And it was your analogy actually in sports, so no shame in the sports analogy, because it just had me thinking a little bit differently about that. Like, how can we, because the lines are so blurred now with personal and professional, why not bring them in? Why not be more explicit about how we as a team can support each other, or how we might, to achieve those? So yeah, thanks for the inspiration.
And that's definitely one of the things when we do goal setting, we try to do is have a mix of personal and professional. Obviously, the professional ones will run the gamut of project-based, organizational-based, skill-based within the professional context. But I like to also track some of the personal ones. Not to have a stick then to say you're not meeting your personal goals, but it helps me understand the person a bit as well, and then how can I support both their personal and professional goals. And make some space for the two to coexist together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it had me thinking, even with some of my projects and teams right now, I'm like inspired to go back and really encourage team members to explicitly articulate what personal goals they might have to each other. Often it's the leader who might know, but then the leader is kind of carrying the burden of like supporting them alone. And if we are in fact a team, why not at least be aware of it? Because there's probably some levers we could each pull, or some assumptions we can lay to rest, because we realize, oh, that's not even a goal of theirs anymore. I don't need to worry about that.
Right. Yeah, we never want to push goals on people.
Yeah. Amazing. So speaking of teams, I'm really curious about your take on alignment and any tips for some pitfalls around alignment.
Yeah.
If you had a thought.
Yeah. I wish I hadn't learned so much about the pitfalls first before I really learned kind of what has worked well for me. So I guess maybe I'll try to, if you go to any web resource, they're going to have a laundry list of what makes a good goal, 7, 8 different things, all this context, how you share it out, all of these different components. I'm going to try to shorten it down to, I guess, just to kind of like a few pillars of good so that I could talk about then how the pitfalls contrast to that. So anytime setting a goal, one of the things I think that's critically important is that the objective is clear. So a squishy objective like be the best or reduce this, it's hard to achieve because the definition is going to be different for different people, and especially if you're trying to have aligned goals, that's really difficult. Even looking at the same event from different angles, you're going to recall it slightly differently. So the same is true with goals. So being really clear with the objective is really important. Another really important part is to make it measurable. So just like I was talking about the squishiness of an unclear objective, not being measurable means you don't have the same bar or the same ruler that you can kind of hold up to them. Not everyone's using the same unit of measure. And it doesn't have to be really complicated. It can be like a little binary one, like, hey, a launch. Did the launch happen or not? Great, that's an easy one. That's a true false. Or it can be a little bit more progressive, something like we want to achieve a 20% growth in sales or 15% growth in achieve or engagement on a particular piece of the software. And then you can kind of track that over time as you go to it. Hey, do we need to turn it up here? Are we trending well? Can we turn it down? Do we need to add focus, reduce? But either way, we're also all measuring it the same way. So clear objective, measurable goal. And then really the third one is time boxed. Like it has to be time boxed. We all know that if you don't have some sort of time constraint, that's the first thing to get eroded with new priorities that do. So when are we going to do it? Well, in those three things, we're kind of basically trying to align people around, what are we trying to accomplish, what it means to accomplish it, and when do we get it? So those are some good goals. There's going to be more things, obviously, that go along with it, but I'm just going to reduce it to those three. But then the pitfalls to that would be, okay, what if we have an unreasonable goal? It's not achievable in the time box that we have. Well, you're not setting yourself up for success. It's going to be hard to align people to that. It's examples of that are like trying to rush something up against a timeline. You're going to be sacrificing something if it's unreasonable, whether it be quality, whether it be the health and welfare of the people involved, something like that. So an unreasonable expectation is a common pitfall. And then uncommunicated goals. That's another pitfall where it's you have a goal, your team has a goal, your part of the organization has a goal that others don't know about. That's a motivator that is going to be hard to communicate out when you're trying to make decisions and priorities against it. Like, I have this secret goal over here that I'm trying to attain. If no one else knows it, how do you defend it? How do you speak openly about it? And then how would you celebrate that? I don't know. It's an internal goal, I guess, that others wouldn't know about. So those are a couple. I don't know if that explains it all the way, but those are just some common pitfalls that I've seen.
Yeah, no, these are great, and I think really great tips too. Keep it clear.
Yeah, and
right?
I've been guilty of them as well. It's not like I've always set goals well. I've definitely had goals set that I've shared with one or two other people, and for one reason or another, like didn't project it high enough or loud enough. And then it gets kind of lost in the noise or becomes deprioritized because I wasn't advocating for it.
Yeah. Love a good time box goal, right? Because it's very clear, like, did we hit this or not? And also measurability, right? It goes back to being squishy. If you can't quite measure it, it's really ambiguous. Did we hit it? Something else that I know is really common in a lot of industries, but especially software development, is a timeline missed goal. So I'm really curious how you approach success or what the conversation is around a missed timeline or approaching what might be a missed timeline. And this is an area where I haven't quite figured it out. Let's say we've nailed the specificity. It's really been communicated, the entire organization, everyone's supporting it. And for whatever reasons outside of our control, we are just not going to meet it. How do you personally as a leader navigate that change? And how do you deal with the moving goal post, which is sometimes a way to mitigate, right? We're going to mitigate against that. Turns out they didn't really need it at that time. Turns out we have a little flexibility. So we're going to move the date a little bit. Now we've got a new goal post, right? So how do you deal with a failed goal and in the face of moving goal posts? What do you do?
Yeah, those are, I'm going to try to segment my answer into kind of two parts. One, first about missing, and then the second one about moving goals here. So missed goals happen, right? Especially in engineering where the answer isn't always clear. It's not like we have the recipe and it's just a matter of, putting the ingredients together, mixing and baking, and out comes. I mean, that's a known quantity with a known timeline, easy to reproduce. Sometimes it's not reproducible. There's a lot of discovery involved and unforeseens happen. My hope and my guidance to any people that are in my teams or in teams that we partner with is, communicate early and often. So it's really risk management. As new risks arrive, let's talk about those risks. What risks do they present to the timeline, the objectives? Are there mitigations that we can put in place to reduce that risk in hopes that then we can keep things on track? Sometimes a risk is unknown, it shows up, and it causes a delay. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. And sometimes we need to deal with those through through many options, right? Like if it's early enough, is there something we can do in the meantime to still hit the goal? Does it mean additional staffing and support that we can add to it? Is there scope that can be removed in order to still hit the critical objective, but maybe not some nice to haves? But what mitigations can be in place to still try to hit that? If we know we're going to miss, we need to figure out what the impact and fallout is. Some of those critical dates, if you miss, it's catastrophic, right? Like Christmas. If you have a Christmas deal, you get a product that's supposed to come out and it doesn't. Well, that's an event that happens once a year. Unfortunately, that miss is you basically need to replan. Like, what other event can this maybe go around or something like that? Oftentimes, what you can do with a missed goal is, at least with a time box missed goal, is okay. What are the impacts? Then how do we mitigate further impacts? Set a new established goal that's already been de-risked, right? Like including the known risks there, and then establish that as the new timeline and delivery. It's never ideal. It's also really hard to stomach for those that were reliant upon that. But oftentimes there's some non-negotiables that cause that slippage. Like there would have been a quality issue. That's a non-negotiable. We have to move the date. Maybe there's a logistical problem. Great, we have the product. We can't get it to people. We have to move the date. Maybe it's a communications issue. Like there's some pending legal issue. Okay, it's external. Nothing we can do. We have to move the date. So some of it's situational, but it really is making sure you're working with your 360 partners, 360 all around you, all your stakeholders. Communicate well and often come up with a shared plan and establish a new timeline. If the goalposts are just moving because, let's say, it was squishy to begin with, I try to stick to the original timeline anyway. I would rather be ready early than let things slide, let priorities build, and then retain that risk to the new goalpost moved. If it's additional requirements that build on it, again, I would still like to deliver on those that are here and then set basically another interval or something that tacked on. So we deliver against this, and then we'll deliver against the second set of requirements after that. That goes back to the small or the short, medium, and long term. Now we're still getting successful moments that show progress against an overall long-term goal, which gives us also cause to celebrate, which is just as important in this line of work. We really have to celebrate our wins.
Yeah, definitely. I like that approach. I'm working on a project right now where we're following that second line of thought, keeping the scope super small, saying no to what was out of scope, bringing them in as potentially stretch goals, but not feeling stressed to commit so that we can celebrate a bona fide completion of the original goal. Because I agree with you, it is way too easy in this industry and frankly in life in general to just keep pushing it and keep extending it, and you never celebrate anything.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
it is.
So on the topic of celebration, I'd love to know maybe tips that you have, especially in remote or distributed teams, software engineering especially. I can imagine way back when I was in an office, when there was an office party and it felt momentous, right? Like you heard an announcement, you saw people in the break room. Even if you couldn't attend, you could walk by during a break and go pick up your piece of pizza or pie or whatever it was, right? And there was something really about being even in the same building where you could share that sense of celebration, regardless if you were on the team or not. So curious what tips you have any favorites maybe that you might have also, but how do you do that well in remote and distributed teams?
Boy, that's actually something I'm still struggling with. I wish I had like a great depth on this to say like, oh, look at all of these ways we've celebrated well and people have felt valued. Um, I could give you some examples, but I'm actually really interested in also what the rest of the community says has worked well for them and how they felt recognized in a distributed and remote environment, because it's not something I feel like I've mastered. Um, but I think one of the most important things that I could see is still calling out the accomplishments and achievements and then naming those individuals. We are individual people, even if we're part of a team, even if we're part of a department, even if we're part of an organization, and getting called out by name, just to be celebrated for a job well done is important. It feels good. It adds to motivation. That recognition also makes you feel like you have a sense of place. So I highly encourage it, by name when possible. Call out the individuals for a job well done. Tokens are also good. I don't know if the 5 love languages are well read by people here, but sometimes gifts are just a way people really feel appreciated. And it doesn't have to be big. It could be something small, just a token. Best if it's something you know about the person. Maybe you could give them something that's personally appropriate, but also maybe you're in a large corporate enterprise environment and you have established gifts and awards and recognitions that you can give out. Those all mean something. And I know personally, I take them all to heart when I receive, a pat on the back, a small widget, just like whatever it is, someone took the time out to send that to me and or to recognize me for a job well done. I think those are important. Teams are the same way. While it is not the individual, you can call out a team for a job well done. And it doesn't have to be extraordinary and above and beyond. Sometimes I struggle with, I want to reward people that worked extra hard, but I don't want to make working extra hard or long hours the way to be recognized. You should be able to be recognized for a job well done without having to work outside the boundaries of a good work-life balance. You shouldn't have to sacrifice. So even calling out a team that has done a really good job is a great motivator. It also lets people on the team, especially if it's maybe an executive level call, let them know that they're seen. And that's just a human quality that we all want. At least, maybe I'm speaking for too many. I like to feel seen personally. And that's what I've been told by others as well. So recognizing them can be in an all hands, could be in a newsletter, could be on Slack, could be in all of these different ways to just let people know that they're seen and they're recognized. What I'd really like to hear from people is maybe some unique ways in which they've been recognized or others have been recognized where they thought, wow, that's a new way of doing things, or a way in a distributed or remote environment that's different and maybe unique. I would love to just hear from others.
I agree. Let's, a call to all who might be watching or in the comments. We are really curious. What are your favorite ways of celebrating others and being celebrated? And while folks think about it, I would love to share, Ben, a couple of tactics that I've had that seem quite similar. The shout out, I agree, is so critical and so important. It's simple. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. But it's important, that recognition. And I actually started a shout out channel at Codingscape so that we could have a specific place where we could go, because sometimes the shout out or the compliment gets a little bit lost in the thread or in the project, and only certain people see it. And so I really wanted to kind of bring that to a space where everyone could celebrate, whether they were part of the project or not. And it was specific to celebrations. And so that was a little, tip that I had. I think you also mentioned like some organizational cultures, and sometimes it depends. Some organizations have budgets for it, right? And that's wonderful. But even if you don't have a budget, to your point, there are really small and meaningful ways that you can do those, have those kinds of celebrations. And I remember, especially during, the height of COVID, it became really popular to actually send a gift to a team member, because the shift away from the office was so disruptive. And that feeling of isolation was so novel. And being able to receive something, and even it was through a screen, then share, right, a selfie or on the video, right? I got my little token. It just meant so much, and it was so rich. Um, and another, again, in some organizations or some teams, I've sort of created like a team identity. Right. And so there was one organization where we were undergoing a really big transition, leadership transitions, technical transitions, teaming transitions. Everything just felt so disruptive and different.
Mm.
And we aligned to really think about standards and classics. And I
Oh,
went
really?
and kind of looked around on Google and found, you might recall this visual, but it's the classic blue and white coffee cup that has it's a paper cup. You often see it in New York
Oh,
coffee shops.
yes,
And it has like the
yes.
little Greek sort of design, right? And it's a classic coffee cup. And
Instantly recognizable.
instantly recognizable. It's iconic, it's classic, but it's also something like really well designed. And I found ceramic versions of them, and that was the token that then I gave to this team. It's like sturdy, right? It's not going to be thrown away. You can use it in your meeting. It represents us as a team going through this massive transition. And it was such a fun, like unique internal to the team, but also something that then you saw in meetings, right? And they carried with them. It was fun.
And I bet you it was noticeable by others as well. Like, I keep seeing this mug.
Absolutely. And commented on, because they're like, isn't that paper? Why do you keep using all these paper? So there's a story with it. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, absolutely. And that it's even a way that I place movies. Like, oh, the blue and white car, they're probably in New York, if not close
Exactly.
nearby, tri-state.
Exactly. It's iconic, right? You
It
can put,
is.
yeah, love that. Love, love, love that. Awesome. Well, I have just a couple more questions for you. When thinking about, the future, we've been in this like goal setting and achieving the goals now, but when thinking about like the future of engineering
Mm.
or the future of health software, right? Or health technology. I'm just curious to step out a little bit and hear some of your thoughts. Like, where do you imagine future goals to be? Or where do you hope that goals as an industry and as a practice that we might go?
Yeah, boy, I have some personal thoughts on that, as well as some, I guess, professional experience. I think when I first started doing development, especially on the web was very fragmented. Everything was browser based. We had the browser wars going on. You had to know the URL. There were multiple search engines: Alta Vista, Yahoo, Google, all of these different options and choices that you had to pick across like the vast array of what was basically the Wild West of the internet at the time. We've gone through a massive consolidation over the last 20 years, and a few tech giants have emerged out of that and really control and own the vast majority of usable real estate. And if not, they are gatekeepers to that access. It's been a big shift that I've watched happen. What I've seen kind of transition now back is a little bit of value on taking some of that ownership back. Like, how do I again kind of start to own my own data, own my own experience, and craft them for myself? That's something I'm very interested in. And then with the AI revolution that is here, not coming, that is very much here, um, we're seeing, okay, where is this going to take us? Like, what are the $1 trillion problems that we're trying to solve with this? And then who's going to be able to solve them? First, it was very distributed. Then we saw massive consolidation into kind of three big houses. We've seen recently kind of a bombshell of a new AI product land that can be run from just about anywhere, and downloaded from GitHub if you want. So you can see that push and pull here, where everything goes out. We find the valuable pieces. It gets consolidated. Then there's kind of a new disruptor. I think the desires of people are to own more of their experience, own more of their data, own a little bit more of their interaction points, a little bit more distrust, unfortunately, that's gone along with it. And I think that's one of the areas as well where I feel very fortunate and am very excited to be at Oura about is Oura very much is about giving you your health data. If I look back at, kind of classic healthcare, right? You go to the doc, they have a file, and they put the file away, and then you can maybe get copies of it if you want. But in this case, you can take your health data that you've monitored over time and bring it to them. You say, look at, this is my sleep data, this is my heart rate data, this is my stress data, this is what's going on with me here. I think that similar model is something that is of interest to people globally on the internet, in compute, in technology right now, today. How do I own some more of this and then choose where it goes?
Yeah, so powerful. Agency, returning agency back to humans so that the tools, the machines, the technology is helping us live better lives. Love
Indeed.
that. Love that goal. Fantastic. Wow. I could talk to you forever about all things goals and technology and health technology. We usually do something called a lightning round. And so just some fun kind of quick questions to throw your way. I'm curious around goals and goal setting and goal tracking. Do you have any favorite software that you use?
I'm pretty bland when it comes to the software that I use for goal tracking. I have some behavioral stuff that I do. Headspace is one that I've actually used that I really enjoy as I, take the goal to be more mindful.
Right.
And that is one that can give me, again, some reminders and motivations to keep on that goal. Now, does it tell me how mindful I'm being? No. But it gives me good cues and it gives me a place and a time to focus on that, which is really what I need. Just that little reminder, a little bit of push going forward. That's a very personal one. I'm trying to think about some professional ones. There's always a new technology to learn and dive into. It's anybody that's in software engineering realizes that you get your base foundation in how to learn, basically at university and in college, and then you come out and you're just like, okay, now that I know how to learn, I just have to perpetually learn whatever the new tech is. So I always have those as well. What is the new tech? What is the emergent tech? How are we going to leverage it? Who's going to help me? Who's going to hold me accountable? I don't have a good tool for that one either. How do I track that over time? I would love to hear how other people track theirs, and what software that they use. But yeah, this is a fun space for me as I look towards how do I improve myself and kind of the perpetual improvement model that I hope to continue on into my old age here.
Yeah. I love this. Love these answers. Thank you. Another quick lightning round question. What are your thoughts on lightning? On lightning. What are your thoughts on vision boards?
Oh, I like anything that unlocks and removes boundaries from creativity. I love it. Whether they be mental models or just classic vision boards, mind maps. I like participating in those exercises, and I actually really like observing because there's so much personality that people demonstrate when they're really in their own personal creative space. And then I like to see how audacious they get. Like some people will stay, you could tell will stay like, okay, I'm very close and focused on this goal. And then other people are out of nowhere. Like they're out of the galaxy with the way their mind works. So I love seeing it. It also gives me another insight into who the person is. And I learn a lot. I learn a lot by watching it. I learn a lot by partaking in it. And then I can carry those artifacts too as inspiration. And then hopefully something on there turns into a North Star, like something we can vector against. That's how we get those audacious goals.
I love it. I want you to send me your vision board. I'll send you mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. Do you have any big personal goals that you feel comfortable sharing this year?
Sure. I've had two. One is a carryover from last year, and that's working for a technical certification in TensorFlow, which is Google's platform and framework for developing against neural networks. That that one I've not made as much progress as I would have liked, and I have to admit it's a little bit due to my need to ramp up in Python again as well. Some of those skills atrophy when I do so much planning. The other on this is I always have a personal health goal. Mine, luckily, is to work on good, healthy sleep habits, and I have an enforcement mechanism right here. That has been historically a challenge for me, as I do get caught up in all the things I want to get done in a day and all the limits that there are in a day. So those things often get sacrificed, or my sleep often gets sacrificed, to my detriment, right? To my focus, to my ability to perform the next day, and then to my long-term health. So those are two focuses for me. Hopefully here, it's January, so people can hold me accountable as we reach to April, May, and June, including my own team members.
Well, consider me an accountability partner with you on sleep. That's for sure. I think we've just been exposed to so much new research on the impact of sleep. Like you said, short-term, long-term, mood, weight. I mean, it impacts truly everything. So I am an advocate with you and working on my own sleep habits and sleep routines. I'm personally working on completing a technical AI course also, and I'm not an engineer. So it's a challenge, but it is one of my personal professional goals. To complete that. So wish me luck on that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know those are difficult. The AI revolution really is a change in the way we problem solve.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure, Ben, chatting with you, all things goals, all things health, strategies, really for healthy team goals even. How about that? Close that there. I love it. For folks who are watching from home, we are Codingscape. We partner with some of the best in the industry, like Ben from Oura. We love to amplify incredible tech talent. We also like to support organizations with your tech roadmaps. So if you're in need of a tech audit, if you're in need of some support around road mapping or setting good goals with your team and even team dynamics, we are happy to help. You can always reach a human at Codingscape when you fill out the form. We will get back to you human to human. We pride ourselves on that and really being incredible team members and partners with everyone we interact with in the industry. So thank you so much, Ben. It's been such a pleasure. And I hope to do this again sometime.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me and for being a gracious host. I really appreciate your time here, as well as the opportunity to be here.
It's my pleasure. Until next time, folks.